He is a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in the Obama administration and author of the briefing book on Substack. Great to see you. So Israel also attacked sites in Syria today. What's Israel's strategy right now in your view?
Well, Fred, it's great to be with you. And clearly what the Israeli government is doing is lashing out at perceived threats in Syria. There's an ongoing dynamic where they're very concerned about the potential for a flow across the border into northern Israel. So there's multiple groups inside of Syria that could be deemed as threats by Israel. But to the bigger picture, you know, these strikes against Hezbollah, of course, the Houthis and now Hamas, it means that we're back on, that the war now returns, that Israel is dealing with multiple threats coming at it. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu, this week, he really asserted himself, and he is now really trying to take it to the proxy groups and put more pressure on Iran overall.
And what's your feeling on that?
Yeah, you know, look, you know, a couple of things here. First and foremost, the United States is not engaged diplomatically in any way, shape, or form on getting a ceasefire that gets hostages out of Gaza. And in fact, we've created confusion in the region about the end state. Simultaneous to that, President Trump has sent a letter to the supreme leader in Iran calling for diplomacy, yet he's threatening and striking the Houthis in Yemen and calling for maximum pressure. So it's all over the place. And I think that's a real danger, Fred. You know, diplomacy can't keep chaos. Chaos in diplomacy creates chaos on the ground. And I think we're right now entering a dithering diplomacy moment, and we just don't have a clear vision for how we want the Middle East conflicts to resolve themselves.
Does this mean giving up or surrender of trying to get any remaining hostages?
That is the big fear amongst those of us who have been supporting Israel and calling for a ceasefire as part of getting the hostages out. And certainly you're seeing on the ground now in Israel a lot of protests, and the families of the hostages, as well as those who've returned, also expressing deep alarm because, look, these strikes into Gaza are possibly going to hit hostages. There is one way that we've seen over the past year and a half that clearly has gotten hostages out, and that's through diplomatic agreements. That's been the fail-safe way. But right now, the diplomacy is dead, and the hostages seem to be lower on the sort of priority set for Prime Minister Netanyahu, who seems to now have a very strong military strategy towards Gaza.
Let me now turn to what's happening or not happening in Ukraine, because there's another round of talks scheduled for next week. President Trump and President Putin, talking on the phone this week, coming away with an agreement to halt attacks on energy infrastructure. But then, of course, Russia asking for a lot, and really the U.S. not getting anywhere with its talks with Russia. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's not really a surprise, is it, Fred? I mean, look, when the United States unilaterally strips away our leverage on Vladimir Putin, talks about distancing ourselves from NATO, withdraws military aid and intelligence support to the Ukrainians, when we never criticize Vladimir Putin, it's obvious that the Russians see a mark, and they see an opportunity to advance their goals. And so they're going to milk this kind of very laconic diplomacy, and they're going to try to get the United States to carry their water at the table. And I think it's very telling that Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, he agreed to a ceasefire a week and a half ago after a lot of pressure. We have really seen nothing from Vladimir Putin that matches that, and yet no criticism of him. And so I think we're really in a moment where we're not using our tools and our ability to pressure both sides to get a legitimate ceasefire negotiation underway.
All right. We'll leave it there for now. Joel Rubin, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Fred.